This is Steve.
And this is Sean.
This is Acro Media's High Five.
So, Steve, what are we going to talk about?
Payments on Drupal Commerce 2.x.
You're getting good at that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, I know from our previous take that we did not accept that the biggest improvement from payments has been the big payment gateway section of the fact that it used to take around 20 or 30 hours to implement a payment gateway, and now we're down to about 10 or even below that hours of actually implementing a payment gateway.
You had your one chance to pretend you knew that all along.
No, I will admit that I didn't know that. That's okay. But that is a huge improvement.
That is a massive improvement. Cutting something down to take about a third of the time is pretty impressive from an API standpoint. And that's with more functionality and not less functionality too.
And this is the big thing that I think everyone wants to know about. How do you do that?
Which is, we took a whole bunch of stuff that you would have to program custom for each payment gateway, and we put it into Commerce itself. And that sounds kind of easy, and it's really not, because you have to make sure that when you put it in, it's going to work for every type of payment gateway that you can think of. It's going to work for regular ones that take credit cards. It's going to work for PayPal. That's a little different. It's going to work for Apple Pay. It's going to work if you want to take Bitcoins or any of those kind of edge cases that your system supports all of those. So you haven't just made it by virtue of making it simple, you haven't just restricted it a whole bunch, and we haven't done that. If anything, we have more flexibility than we used to, which is pretty impressive. It did take 3 revisions and a lot of time.
Yeah.
But it has
5 years, right? 5 years of improvement.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 5 years of Commerce 1, learning all of that and the various add-ons and things that have been made during that, and then it's all the work actually building it into Commerce 2. But it has made things very, very nice to work with, because for the most part now, to give an example, if you're implementing a payment gateway, usually there is some sort of library or API for the payment gateway, and you need to connect everything up with your e-commerce system to that library so that when you say, want to process a payment, it knows, so, okay, tell this library to process a payment. And so we have it narrowed down. So mostly you're just connecting those two pieces. There's very little custom logic you have to write in between. You just sort of link the pieces up, which makes it very fast.
Yeah, it would seem so. Going aside from just that huge improvement, is there anything else, like any features that we would want to talk about that have been a big improvement from 1 to 2?
We use tokenization for everything by default.
By default?
By default.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to give a quick explanation of tokenization?
Yes. Tokenization is when you take a credit card number and you pass it on to the payment gateway, and then they give you a reference for that back. And so any actual actions you do with the credit card, making payments, making refunds, making reoccurring payments, pre-authing a card, any of that is done against this token and not against the actual card. So you don't store the credit card number, you just store this reference to the credit card number. So that lets you say, okay, I take this token and I want to charge $10 on it. It just goes to the payment gateway, they read the token and they say, okay, that's actually this credit card in our system. They update it, or they take it, they make that charge against for $10. There's an additional advantage of that too, is the fact that if that card changes, like it expires and a new one is issued, most payment gateways will handle that on the back end. So you just use the same token you always used, and you don't have to get the customer to put in a new payment gateway. If you've used Netflix or something, you'll see that happens with them or whatever. They will just keep billing you for eternity. Because they don't need your new credit card. They just keep, unless you cancel it and get it issued an entirely new one that doesn't link up, but as long as it links up.
So buyer beware, never buy a magazine you don't want again, because you'll have it forever.
You're going to have to call them and go through 7 departments because they got you for life now. Or just cancel all your credit cards and just live on a cash only, so a barter system or something. Where you only buy things with chickens and stuff like that.
Well, before we conclude the episode, why don't we touch a little bit on multi-currency? Because I know that's improved a lot since 1 to 2.
We can do that, and then also remind me, then we'll talk a little bit about PCI compliancy.
Okay, let's do that
as well. So, multi-currency, we use a nice localization library that's been provided by Google to handle currencies for pretty much every currency that exists in the world. Because Google can do that, and they spend the time to handle that. And that's things like you think, what's the big deal with a different currency? Just your payment gateway has to support it. But there's other stuff in that. You have to know how to format it and deal with it. What symbol does it use to mention it? Does it use, does that language use commas or periods or spaces, for separators? Does it have decimal points? How many decimal points does it have? 2 decimal points, 3 decimal points? We just learned 4 decimal points.
4 numbers after the decimal point.
Yeah. It's the same thing, but okay. it's good that you feel included. So, and so all the formatting, and that's both multi-currency is actually a combination of the currency itself and the language it's being displayed in. For example, in Canada, even if it's just the Canadian dollar, it's displayed differently in French than it is in English. In English, the dollar sign is at the front, and we use a period for the decimal separator. In French, it is the dollar sign is at the back, and there's a comma. So things like that. So you need this combination of both to match up and display currencies.
And you want to talk about PCI compliance?
Yeah. So when I was talking about tokenization before, the second benefit of that is you are not storing the credit card. And so that's how we try to do that by default to lower your PCI compliancy threshold. And then in a number of the more modern gateways like Stripe and Braintree, they have a JavaScript layer that they do so that you don't even store that credit card number, even for a fraction of a second. You don't have it, just while you take it and send it to the server. It never ever touches your server. It goes right from the user's browser to the payment gateway, and then the payment gateway delivers us via JavaScript the token. So we only ever touch the token. So that means if you get hacked, you never have to give that email out to all your customers that says, hey, we've been hacked. I'm sorry all your credit cards have been leaked. Because that can't happen because you never had them. So it's literally impossible for you to leak any credit cards. You can say, hey, we've been hacked. Sorry, maybe change your password. But the credit cards will be safe. They will always be safe. And that puts you down at basically the lowest level of PCI compliancy you can be while still taking card not present transactions.
Right on. And so outside of that, which is actually pretty huge, I'm going to say that the too long didn't read is the fact that there's a massive improvement from how you actually integrate payment gateways from 1.x to 2.
It's way simpler, and they have a lot more functionality.
We use the Google library for the currencies. If you're interested in what we have to say, subscribe so you can see our future videos. And if you have any questions, please put them down below, and Sean personally will answer them.
Yes, and if you would like to talk to Steve, who is a old wizened father now, please send him a letter in the mail, handwritten preferably. Also, follow us on Facebook, follow our blog at acromedia.com, and follow me on Twitter.